I kicked my son out of the house and rehomed his pet after he chose my ex. Now, all my entitled children have gone NC with me, and even my minor daughter refuses to come to my house. I'm using a throwaway because I'm fairly sure at least one of my sons scrolls here, and I don't need this circling back to me before I've had a chance to think it through. I'm 45, divorced with 3 kids, 2 boys, 19 and 18, and a daughter who's 17. For years, we had a system that worked. The kids split time between my place and their mums, week here, week there. It wasn't perfect, but it was consistent, and I thought it gave them some balance. At least, that's how I saw it. My oldest graduated high school in 2023. He's in college now, but decided to stay with his mom over the summer. I didn't push it. He said it made more sense with his job and friends being closer to her place. Fine. He's an adult, technically. I let that one go without making it into something bigger. My younger son graduated this past June. Literally within a couple days of graduation, I sat him down. I told him things were different now. He's 18, done with school, and the back and forth arrangement doesn't make sense anymore. I said he needed to decide where he was actually going to live, not visit live. I gave him a deadline, July 1. I didn't think that was unreasonable. It gave him a couple of weeks. He knew the situation, knew the expectations. I wasn't asking for anything complicated, just a decision. July 1st came and went. No answer, no conversation, no text, no call. Nothing. Not even the idea that he might choose his mom's place, but the lack of response, like it didn't matter enough to even acknowledge. So the next morning, July 2nd, I acted. I got up early and started going through their rooms. Both boys still had full setups here. Beds, clothes, old school stuff, random junk they'd accumulated over the years. I grabbed trash bags, boxes, and whatever I had and started packing. Clothes, shoes, books, electronics, posters, everything. I didn't sort, I didn't organize, I packed. Then I moved it all outside, front yard. Lined it up along the driveway. It looked like someone had just moved out in a hurry. I texted both of them once I was done, told them their stuff was outside and they needed to come get it. The replies came fast after that. What do you mean, our stuff is outside? Why did you do that? I told them straight, if they were choosing to live with their mother, then their things would go with them. I wasn't going to keep holding on to their belongings like this was still some shared arrangement. They pushed back, said they hadn't chosen anything yet. That I didn't even give them time. That part irritated me. I did give time. I gave a deadline. They ignored it. One thing I made sure to include was my younger son's snake. He's had it for a couple years, keeps it in a tank in his room. Not my favorite thing, but it was his responsibility. I packed that up carefully and told him to take it with him. That's when he started arguing again, said he couldn't bring it to his mom's because they already have a dog and 2 cats. I told him that wasn't my problem, it's his pet. It goes where he goes. It took both of them multiple trips to get everything. 3 trips each, actually. Their cars were packed full every time they pulled out. I stayed inside for most of it, didn't feel like turning it into some drawn-out conversation on the driveway. Once it was all gone, the house felt different. Quieter, obviously, empty in a way it hadn't before. My daughter's still here half the time, but it's not the same energy. I didn't have long to sit with that before my phone rang. It was their mother. She didn't ease into it. The first word out of her mouth was that she was livid. Her tone made that pretty clear without the word, but she said it anyway. She went off about how she doesn't have space for all their things, that they already have stuff at her house because of the back and forth over the years, that I basically dumped an entire second household onto her without warning. I told her the same thing I told the boys. They live there now, so their stuff belongs there too. She kept pressing, asking where exactly she's supposed to put everything. Saying her garage is already full. The shed isn't meant for storage like that, and the house doesn't have room for it. I pointed out that there is a shed and a garage. That's storage space. That's what it's for. She didn't like that. Then she switched topics and brought up the snake. Said I had no right to send a live animal into her house without even asking her. I told her it's our son's pet, not mine. If he lives with her, the pet goes with him. I'm not keeping it. That's when she called me an arse the first time. Then again, a second time, louder, after I repeated myself. She kept saying I don't get to dictate how she uses her house or her storage, that it's not my place anymore. I said it used to be my house too, which, yeah, maybe not the strongest argument, but in the moment it felt relevant. That didn't land well either. Eventually she backed off a little. Said she loves the boys and she'll help them figure something out, but that doesn't mean she agrees with anything I did. I told her she doesn't have to agree. If they're living with her, then the responsibility comes with it. That includes their belongings. She hung up after that. Since then, it's been quiet from both sides. The boys haven't said much beyond a couple short texts. Nothing confrontational, just distant. My daughter hasn't really weighed in either, but I can tell she's paying attention. I've been sitting with it, replaying everything. The deadline, the silence, my reaction. Part of me feels justified. I set a clear expectation, and it was ignored. I followed through. I didn't yell, didn't drag it out. I made a decision and acted on it. But there's another part of me that keeps coming back to how it actually looked. Their stuff is in trash bags on the lawn. The rush of it. The fact that I didn't give them even one more nudge before going that far. And yeah, the snake. I know that was a sticking point. I don't think I'm wrong about the principle. If they're adults and choosing where to live, then the split life setup ends. That makes sense to me. What I'm less sure about is the way I handled enforcing it. So I'm asking, was I out of line here, or was this just a hard but necessary line to draw? Opinions. One person said, I don't think you realize how transactional you made your relationship with your kids sound. Pick a house, no answer. Then all your stuff is gone. Oh, and take the snake too. That's not parenting, those are terms and conditions. Your sons didn't fail some obligation, they hesitated. And instead of following up like a normal parent, you escalated immediately to consequences that didn't match the situation. You skipped about 5 reasonable steps in between, and dragging the older one into it too. That's where it really falls apart. He wasn't even part of your deadline conversation, but he still got treated like he broke a rule. That's not consistency. That's you reacting emotionally and sweeping both of them into it. Your ex is mad about logistics, sure, but she's really mad because you made a mess and handed it to her while acting like it's her responsibility now. That's not co-parenting, that's offloading. You wanted clarity. That's fair. You handled it like a power move. That's the problem. Another person thinks, what are you, my kids or my exes? That's basically the message you sent, whether you meant to or not. Kids of divorce don't experience life as teen mom versus teen dad, unless one of the parents forces that framing. You forced it, hard. And once you do that, every choice they make starts to feel like betrayal instead of just life. You're also ignoring the timing. One kid just graduated. That's a weird, unstable phase. No schedule, no structure, no clear next step yet. You picked that exact moment to demand a permanent decision and then punished him for not immediately having one. And let's be real, you weren't just setting a boundary. You were hurt, he didn't pick you quickly, so you made sure he felt the consequence of that. The scary part isn't this incident, it's what it teaches them. Your support can disappear if they don't respond the right way. That's how you end up being the parent they keep at arm's length later. Not out of anger, but self-protection. Another person thinks, man, this whole thing reads like one of those situations where everybody's talking about the stuff. But the real issue is, nobody is saying the ugly part out loud. You felt replaced. That's it. That's the engine under all of this. Your oldest is with his mom for the summer. Your younger son graduates and doesn't immediately affirm that your house is still home base. Your brain goes straight to, so they picked her. And once you framed it that way, the rest became punishment disguised as household management. I'm not even saying I don't get the emotion. Divorce does weird shit to people for years, especially when the kids get old enough to start making choices that feel personal even when they're not meant that way. Watching your sons drift towards their mom's place probably hit something raw. Maybe it made you feel like all those years of shuttling back and forth ended with you losing anyway. That feeling is real, but holy hell, your response was ugly. You took a very normal young adult gray area and treated it like a betrayal. An 18-year-old who just graduated is not exactly a master planner. A 19-year-old home for the summer isn't necessarily announcing a permanent loyalty shift. A normal parent might be annoyed, might have a tense conversation, might set a new deadline with actual consequences. You went full, fine, then get all your shit off my property. That's not boundary setting, that's abandonment theater. And your sons absolutely understood the message, even if you think this was just about belongings. Kids clock emotional subtext fast, especially with divorced parents. What they heard was, if you don't choose me clearly and quickly enough, your place here disappears. That can f with someone for years, because now every future interaction has this question underneath it. If I disappoint dad, does he yank love, space, and safety the second he feels disrespected? Your ex, for her part, sounds like the only person in this story who stayed even remotely in parent mode. She was pissed, yes, But notice what she said at the end. She loves the boys and will help them figure it out. That's what an actual parent says in the middle of inconvenience. She didn't say your behavior was okay. She just dealt with the fallout because someone had to. Also, I can't get over the snake.